Hello, welcome to Only Facts Media. Um, hit that, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button if you like this video, and share away. Don't forget to get notifications for up and coming videos. I have just dropped the German Magdeburg attack, which is quite a harrowing video. Um, but I did leave a lot of stuff out because it was just too much. Anyway, this is Alex Phillips, who works for Talk TV, and she's fantastic. I haven't put the whole podcast on yet. I might do, but this is more or less the last half hour where she talks about Tommy Robinson, and all sorts of interesting things about migrants and whatnot. So enjoy. I'll take my face off and enjoy.
To get older generation porn
You know-
stars so they can give a cautionary tale.
I would rather have the Bonnie Blues of this world doing what she does and it only be Bonnie Blue. If she wants to do that, fine. I think there's something really fucked up about it being going after college kids. Why aren't you going after men?
Is that her niche fame? Is it getting her maximum attention?
She knows that these people are A, more willing to probably do it, B, it probably poses less physical risk to her. You know, they're more impressionable, they're more likely, and probably also there's going to be an aesthetic element that she's not going to get Jimmy Five Bellies rocking up and trying to land one inside her. So, I'm sure all these things were in her consideration, but there's something very warped about it. We shouldn't throw young men under the bus. Which we do all the time. We look at everything happening in the world as uniquely affecting women detrimentally. Porn arguably affects men detrimentally even more.
Speaking of how things affect women, illegal migration is probably the biggest bone of contention in the country. And I have a lot of men sitting opposite me, shaking their fist about how, angry and put out a joint they are and that they're put second. There's a plethora of fears and concerns and worries and genuine reason for a lot of people to be very, very angry at the moment with the country. But I never hear it from a woman's perspective, like how it would make a female feel knowing that there's unfettered migrants coming in the country, because we know that they come from a very different place where they perceive women very differently.
Yeah.
And when they land, they get given a smartphone. We know this. They then get immediate access to porn.
Well, I'll tell you what, it depends what women you're asking, doesn't it?
You as a human being.
Well, me as a human being, it's like I said, women's safety and integrity is being thrown under the bus at the altar of mass immigration and, racism and all the rest of it, and political correctness. And it's absolutely not okay. Absolutely not okay. But depending what woman you ask that question to, you're going to get a different response. By and large, a middle-class white woman will tell you, it's awful, these poor people, they need to be looked after. Racist to even ask the question. There's a number of reasons why. One is they've probably had to go through the DEI bullshitting process a lot more. If you've gone to a posh school, or then you work in Goldman Sachs, or you've gone to university, or you're working at the BBC or in the civil service or whatever, you've had to tug your forelock to all of that diversity crap the whole way through to get where you want. So you've kind of essentially been gaslit to the point you become the gaslighter. Point number one. Point number two is it's luxury ideology. The middle classes can't go, I've got a smartphone and you don't anymore. Contrary to popular opinion, the wealth gap in many respects, or quality of life gap's actually closed. A lot, Everyone can have a smart TV and a smartphone and a foreign holiday and all the trappings of luxury that are only available to the middle classes. And keeping up with the Joneses was all about having the stuff. Well, now that playing field is being levelled, the keeping up the Joneses, the stuff is ideology. You show your middle class, you show your class status by adopting and being able to enact the radical ideologies that you've been brainwashed with. Now, why do they get to do that? Why does that why is it that working class people aren't also going like, oh, but the poor migrants, we must love them all. You're racist to even ask this question if this is going to affect women's safety. Because it's in their communities. the middle-class white woman living in Hampstead doesn't have a migrant hotel. She didn't have a load of, young men aged 14 smoking cigarettes and wanting to exchange Snapchat details with their teenage daughter outside the school gate. She doesn't have that. It doesn't affect their lives right now. Right now. Doesn't affect them. They're not living in the places where this is happening. You work in a profession and you sit at a desk next to a man from Iran, whether you're a nuclear scientist, a civil servant, a journalist, a teacher, you're going to be meeting and knowing and working regularly with an educated person from Iran who's from the middle classes, who will share Western values and will have probably integrated, has language skills and is probably very Westernized. If you meet a man who's come off the boat, who isn't from the educated professions, but he was a goat herd, he doesn't speak the language. He probably thinks that a woman showing a bit of ankle should have rocks thrown at her. The exposure and the type of person, the type of migrants you're meeting is massively different. The idea that you can take poor men from radically different cultures, and the minute they somehow land on our shores, they have suddenly all the years of their life where they've never had a Western education. They've never been exposed to our values. They've never been brought up in our society. That all of a sudden that stuff is going to just, by magical osmosis, be inside them. They're going to be upstanding, integrated British citizens. It's for the fucking birds. Of course that doesn't happen. In the same way that if I suddenly went to live in, rural Afghanistan, I'm not going to know what the rules are. I'm not going to know how to live. I'm going to find that way of life totally alien to me and make all sorts of faux pas. Why would it not be the same coming the other way round? So it does matter on what class of society you're at, because the Iranian nuclear scientist and the Afghan goat herd, or the Afghan nuclear scientist and the Afghan goat herd, are very different fucking offerings and very different experiences to interact with. The problem is with the illegal migration thing, and it's deeply concerning because these people are unchecked, unvetted. We know that illegal migratory routes are used as cash cows, at the very least for terrorist organisations. The same way that the Taliban once made all their money from poppy fields and selling opium and drugs cartels, the biggest illicit trade now in the world is the trade in humans. It's the biggest one. And so much more, earning money from drugs is small time these days. People trafficking is where you get the big bucks. And who are the ones making the money from this? It's Hezbollah, it's Hamas. It's the Taliban, it's Al-Qaeda, it's the PKK, it's the pro-Khalistan movements, it's the Wagner mercenaries, it's all the sort of this is how they make money through criminality, right? Whether it's selling drugs or selling the transit of people. So we're already filling the pockets of ne'er-do-wells who hate this country, but we're also allowing Lord knows who connected to these organisations in, even if it's just gangsters and, drug dealers wanting people to go work in a cannabis farm. It's the criminal underworld you're feeding and aiding and abetting. At the very least, even if this is a genuine refugee, they've paid fuckloads of money to people who shouldn't be in receipt of any sorts of money. It's a madness. But that is bad enough. But the problem here now is this has become the big distraction. Look at the boats. Look at the boats. And what did we learn? We learned that out of all the OECD groups of nations, the wealthiest nations on earth, that our levels of legal migration, and not just legal, but permanent style, as it's called, which means people who will come and not go back. They haven't come as a seasonal worker, but they've come to live. It's the highest in the world. And I'm more concerned on some level about the fact that we've got 1 million people gross coming into the country every year. Every year. Now, we are always given the net figures, but that means that people have emigrated. By and large, the people that there might be people going home, but a lot of the people we're losing are people we don't want to, doctors and nurses to Australia and so on and so forth. People just going to Dubai because they've had enough because this country's shite. I love this country, but it does feel shite right now. But if you've got 750,000 people coming from all around the world to live in your country, you're beginning to chip away at what it means to be your country. Your country's identity. It's the things that make a country, the commonality, the shared language, the same history, the same heritage, the same culture, laughing at the same jokes, listening to the same music. You're beginning to chip away at that stuff. Because you're essentially drowning it out. You're beginning to dilute it, for want of a better word, because dilution kind of starts sounding quite ethno-nationalist, and I don't mean it to be that. I have nothing wrong when it comes to race in this issue. I do have something wrong with once you have committed sort of industrial scales cultural vandalism, you can't really get it back. It's very difficult when you have sort of started losing your history and your cultural identity to artificially remanufacture it. And that's the argument actually against colonialism, that white people went to Australia and the Aboriginal culture was dominated and drowned out. So, you can make the same argument, even though it's on a very different scale and a very different approach, but there's a validity in making the same argument about protecting our own heritage and making sure that immigration happens at numbers that's sustainable, both economically and in terms of infrastructure, but also culturally, when it comes to not just integration, but assimilation.
So if we can touch base on feelings for 1 second.
Right.
So there's a spike in violence against women. That's a headline I do not like to read at all. There's an influx in migrants coming over. So 2 things. Is there an obvious link that people are denying? And also, as a woman, knowing all of that, how does it actually make you feel?
Is there a link? Well, look, until we have statistical evidence, you can't prove or disprove something. That statistical evidence is withheld from us. But I think anybody with a shard of common sense or logic would assume that there is, given what the empirical evidence is that's available from other countries, and given what the left always like to term lived experience. How does it make me feel? I think the thing I get the most is anger. I'm so angry. I'm so angry that I'm going to be motivated forever to do something about this. And yet, who am I angry at? Not the people on the boats.
It's got to be the people allowing it.
Not the migrants. They're humans. They're going to take the opportunity if they can. Why wouldn't they? Right? If our country goes to shit, which it kind of constantly feels like it's going to, and all of a sudden you thought you could go to somewhere where, you could make more money and have a freer life, whatever it may be, you're going to take that opportunity. Why wouldn't you?
Totally agree.
It's the weakness and cowardice of the political classes and people leading in business and people leading in the professional classes, because everyone's got a stakeholder in this, whether you're the person reporting on the story in the media, whether you're the doctor at hospital who can see patterns of things being put in front of them but dare not blow the whistle or speak truth to power, whether you are the politician, whether you are, whatever it may be, right? If you're in a position where you actually have a degree of influence and a degree of power and a bit of status, middle class and upwards, fucking do something about it, because this is your country.
Do you get challenged off air, or do you find that most people agree but they just don't want to say it out loud in public?
No, not many people tend to challenge me off air, really. Maybe there is a sense that people agree. I don't know. But like I said, a lot of the time, I think a lot of people probably do agree, but it's cowardice and selfishness. Really, it's a lack of guts and a lack of wanting to get out of your comfort zone. And it doesn't pass muster anymore because, frankly, the people destroying this country are the people of this country, because they're not fucking going, this ain't right.
They're not fighting for it no more.
They're not fighting for it. Now, what does fighting for it look like? It doesn't look like fighting.
Throwing bricks at police officers, no.
The fighting for it is having the willingness to listen and having the guts, the togetherness and the calmness, actually, the resolution, the steadfast faith and belief in that what you know is the right thing, and having the faith to say, I am as much part of doing something about this as everybody else. We can't just go, I'll wait for someone else to deal with it. If everybody suddenly went, I'm going to be part of that change, it would overnight, we'd have a different complexion.
Speaking of cowardice, I put a tweet out on X and I said, if you were sat opposite Alex Phillips, what one question would you ask? And somebody put in the comments, I would ask her why it's taken her so long to look into the persecution of Tommy Robinson. I then commented underneath saying, what I'll actually ask is, how come you're the first mainstream journalist to highlight the persecution of Tommy Robinson? So if we're going to talk about bravery, what made you go there? knowing that you could get massive backlash or even cancelled?
Because so far it hasn't happened, and because, like I said, I've suddenly realised that we are all stakeholders in this. You can't expect someone else to do something if you're not going to do it yourself. So maybe that's it. Also, frankly, I'm, as much as all the people I'm talking about, the middle classes who have to tug their forelock to diversity and to get to where they are, I've been on that travelator. After university, I went and lived around the world working as a journalist in loads of different countries, mainly across the Commonwealth. Came home, went to journalism school and worked for ITV and then the BBC. So then I'm on the travelator, right? And what happened was, I remember once at a meeting at the BBC, it was when, it's a year after the Eastern European countries had given freedom of movement to the UK, and they wanted to do a sort of talk about, a year later, how have things changed? Sitting in this editorial meeting, they're like, I know this amazing text of, my wonderful hairdresser. We can go and look at this, Polish restaurant and the meals are really delicious and da, da, da. And I was like, what about the school where the teacher's struggling to teach kids because there's 7 different languages? Everyone just sort of looked at me like I was speaking, I was basically going, fucking hate the Poles, they're evil, send them all home. Why would anyone? I fucking love the Poles. Bring them back. I'm missing them, can I just say? And I remember sitting in that editorial meeting thinking, I can't live like this. I can't be in an organisation that you can't talk about stuff and you're the BBC. And so I left to go and work for Nigel Farage. I was on their VIP training scheme. I was one of 10 people picked from around the country to be fast-tracked through the BBC as a star of the future. One of 10 in the whole country. And I fucking left that to go and work for Nigel Farage before anyone even knew who he was. So I stood up and made my decision a long fucking time ago, that I was prepared to sacrifice to do what I believe in.
Well done.
Now, when it comes to the Tommy thing, there is still something going on politically because of things baked into society that it's still incredibly difficult to address. It's still very difficult to... what's at stake for a lot of people is a lot. What's interesting is with Tommy, he's lost it all already. He couldn't suddenly come out of prison and go, do you know what? I'm done with being Tommy Robinson. I'm going to go back to being Stephen Yaxley Lennon. I'm going to go get a job as... It's done now, isn't it? It's gone. He's made his bed and he's got to lie in it. He doesn't have a choice anymore, and he's fighting. He's fighting and saying, I got nothing to lose. A lot of people like this still have a lot to lose, and it's a big decision. If you're prepared to jeopardize it or risk it, particularly when it comes to economics and finance, right? If you're a journalist and you got children or whatever, or journalists aren't paid a lot. When people see someone on Telebox, they assume they're sort of rolling around in a Merc. No, they're not. Journalists are paid shit unless you're Gary Lineker. So if that's your main source of income and you're worried that you're going to lose it, and everyone's replaceable, especially if you're on telly or radio, everybody wants that job. Could be replaced in a second. Then it's very difficult thinking I'm going to risk this. It's tenuous anyway, and I'm prepared to just, put some TNT underneath it. But I've got past form with doing this anyway in life, right? Like I said, left BBC to go to, I've taken those risks and it's always worked out for me. But also I'm a believer in God. I'm a big believer in God. And for those people who are listening who aren't religious, this stuff always sounds a bit balmy to somebody who isn't a believer. But for those people who are listening who are believers, they will understand what I say when I say I feel his hand on my shoulder. And that gives one courage. So, circumstantially, I hadn't even really sort of spoken about it because he's not mentioned in newsrooms. He's persona non grata in newsrooms. So his name hasn't really come up a lot in my life anyway. During the riots, I went to do an interview with Panorama and his name came up and they said, what do you think about Tommy Robinson? I knew they were trying to ask some sort of leading question. And I said, I don't know him. I've not met him. Still to this day, I have not met him. So I don't know. But he's a phenomenon, and shouldn't, as a journalist, you be asking why Tommy Robinson instead? Now, since that, Tommy got in touch with me on Twitter, and said something about, I liked what you posted or something. I can remember his name popping up and thinking,
That's him.
Robinson's messaged me. Yeah, like,
Tommy.
I just replied. Turns out he loves replying, doesn't he? He's like, well, probably can't so much right now, but he's communicates quick fire. And so then I said to him, well, let's do an interview, because I thought, this is ridiculous. I watched his Oxford Union presentation, and do you know what I felt when I saw him? I was so proud of him.
Incredible, wasn't it?
Oh, I was so proud of him in that moment. This working class man.
And he was young back then.
Young, little podgy face. This working class man standing up in front of the toughest audience. Most top academics would be scared going into that lion's pit.
Round of applause.
And I felt a real sense of pride in him. And then after interviewing him and hearing about his story, that was an education for me as well. And we spoke for way over 2 hours. The interview on thatalexwoman.com is an hour long, because you need to cut things down to be able to be hosted on the site. But also he talked a lot about the documentary, and unfortunately law's the law. Mm-hmm. But yeah, having spoken to him, I then went back. He said to me, go and look at the old protest down in Luton. Yeah, there was a load of skinheads and thug-looking people, if you will. You're a thug-looking person, working class.
I tick all in boxes.
Loads of people, carrying placards. There's even one video of a load of people in Bally's burning a flag. Yeah. They're burning the swastika. They're burning the Nazi flag. And when I went back and Tommy said, look at the sort of things we were saying, they had signs saying no to racism. I'm like, eh? Like, look, I'm 40 and I hadn't done my research before this point. And I went and I was like,
he woke up. So
then you kind of go on a hunt. I'm going to find the thing he said and done. I'm going to weed it. Why? I'm going to find it. And I haven't been able to, other than simple fact, he comes from a dog-eat-dog world. Neighbourhood he was brought up in. A dog-eat-dog world where it's kind of survival of the fittest. Yeah, he used to be a hooligan. He owns up to that stuff. And like I said to you at the start of this interview, I've lived in that world as well. I've worked in the nightclubs and the pubs of Gloucester. That's Britain. They're the people who, if there was a war tomorrow, they're fighting for it. They're the people who are the bastions of our heritage, our humour, our culture, the bricks and mortar. It's them. They're the ones who make a pub a lively and exciting place. Not a fucking gastropub with gin and tonic for 25 quid with half the garden in a flower vase. No, I don't want that. I don't want that. I want the bawdy humour. I want the sort of un-PC jokes. I want the sort of, we'll have our fights, we'll resolve them. Come into my house, borrow anything you like. I'll do that for you. I'll mow your lawn. My kid will go up that ladder for you. Community. And that's exactly what the middle class don't have. They don't even know what it is. They've got zero fucking community. So I know when the shit hits the fan, I know what the backbone of this country is. Not just the backbone, but the beating heart.
So after actually interviewing Tommy,
yeah,
did you get any backlash for interviewing him?
No.
Did Nigel Farage not say anything to you about it?
He's not said anything to me.
Because he does distance himself from Tommy.
Yeah, well, we haven't actually spoken about it. I've spoken to Nigel since, but didn't come up in our conversation. He'll be aware of it.
Yeah. Why do you think Nigel Farage does distance himself from Tommy? Because they've got the same fan base.
Look.
You'll see the exact strategies they use, like the 180 phase changer or the T-wave strategy, and you'll learn how to apply them for yourself. At Learn to Trade, we've been helping people just like you become confident, skilled traders for over 21 years. We're not just an online platform, we're a global leader in trader education with trading floors, offices and coaches in the UK, South Africa, the Philippines and Australia. We've trained more than 500,000 people to trade smarter, better and more profitably. Our team includes some of the best trader coaches in the world. And during this live masterclass, you'll learn directly from them. This isn't just theory. This is a practical, actionable and hands-on event. The masterclass is for people who are serious about trading, who understand that real success takes effort, focus and the right training. If that sounds like you, don't miss this opportunity.
So what you just saw is how I send my project files and footage to my editors using LucidLink. But what is LucidLink? It's a cloud storage that feels like a local drive because the transfer happens instantaneously. And I have 3 editors, one in Thailand, one in Los Angeles, and one in Kansas City. And we can all upload and share the same footage and the same project file from our one remote drive, our LucidLink file space. Hey guys, how's it going?
Right.
So I got us set up on Lucid. It's gonna be a new replacement to our workflow so we can all access files. Jiva, I'm actually going to drop in a short right now that I just filmed inside of your folder underneath our Opus project. You should be able to see it here shortly, Jiva, if you want to share your screen. Oh, you see it already?
Yeah, I didn't even have the chance to share my screen yet. It's already up.
Share the screen though. All right, so do you want to try to play that back right now? We haven't even downloaded this.
All right. Oh.
Oh, there I am.
Okay. That was pretty quick. How does that work?
So basically, LucidLink, it lets you stream the
I don't want to be piggy in the middle in this one. And it's not fair for me to sort of say one thing or another or assume something or the other. I adore Nigel. He's one of my best friends in the world. I was his right-hand woman for a long time. What I do know, what I can tell you is he's very astute politically. And he knows that Reform have got a real chance now. 5 seats in Parliament, looking at the current polling, and we're only 3 months into this new Labour government. It's not really working out, is it? I don't think the sort of huge boost of Badenoch's having the right sort of impact. It seems to me, and we're still a long way away from the next election, but if Reform can target, this is to win seats in our Parliament under our system, it's not good enough to just go, we're going to say what we believe and that's it. You've got to strategise tactically. That involves both targeting certain constituencies, looking where you've got your second places, putting funding resources, building up local branches, building up, a head of steam and a sort of a centrifugal force in certain areas. There's those mechanics. The other mechanics are to get a majority, right? You look at the seats where you've got the most likely demographic. For Reform, it's largely white working class seats where they're going to probably perform super well. For obvious reasons, like you said, same fan base. But also to get yourself over the line, in a lot of these instances, you need to build blocks of voters. So you need to be able to get those people who are your base. You also need to drag in some of the people who aren't actually your base. The sort of grey collar sector, the professional classes, now these people who aren't necessarily your base might not have had the scales fall away from their eyes yet, like I've been talking about. And again, for a lot of people, however much we think everything is now online, a lot of people are still heavily influenced by legacy media. So you know what would happen. I'm not saying this is Nigel's thinking, but logically speaking, if Nigel turned around and said, Tommy Robinson, even if he just said something really neutral. In fact, if he just said Tommy Robinson without even finishing the sentence, if he just went Tommy Robinson, that's all that they're going to talk about every time he's interviewed. But you said the other day, Tommy Robinson, you said... So he can talk as much as he likes about reforming the NHS or improving education or tackling the cost of living crisis or geopolitics or how much money we should be... Doesn't fucking matter. It's gone. It's done. Because all they'll say is, but you said Tommy Robinson. So all of a sudden, this vote that he's got stays, might grow a bit. The other votes he needs to get over the line to win seats to actually affect political change is minimised. Now, that's just election strategy, of which I've done a lot myself, not just in the UK, but other countries. So choices are made politically. And those choices are political, not necessarily personal, in the same way that, we've been speaking already about that people having a lot at stake just in the ordinary world of saying what they think. Even if you're just someone who runs a bakery and it's your own family business, you're worried about what you can say and do. When you get into the world of politics at the highest level, the stakes are even fucking higher because everyone's waiting to trip you up, especially if you're Nigel Farage. They're all waiting to find whatever they can to try and prevent you being successful. So he has to figure out It's a narrow path, but he's got to figure out how to walk it. That will change. That will change. You know, things do dramatically change. When he first entered into politics and just spoke about leaving the EU, leaving a trading bloc, racist, lunatic, fruitcake. That's all he said. He just wanted to leave the EU. Perfectly normal. We've actually left it now. Then when he started saying immigration levels are too high, racist, monster. Well, now it's a conversation that even the Labour Party are prepared to say, well, you know, we've got to bring down the levels of immigration. So he's the one who actually shifts the narrative in this country, moves the debate along quite often. And he doesn't shy away from doing it. And he's also one of the best readers of the political tea leaves. So let him figure that out.
People will be expecting me to ask the question. I understand why Nigel Farage won't mention Tommy politically. That does make political sense, and I can see why he would do that. Not mentioning Tommy is obviously a different ball game to actually denouncing him, and people want to know, did Richard Tice overstep the mark recently where he completely denounced Tommy and his followers by referring to them as that lot, and he was dismissive?
Look, I know Richard Tice really dearly as a huge intrinsic part of reform. And at some point I probably will be again. But I know these people personally, and I'm not advising them strategically. And I don't want to say anything that will, you know, that's going to upset anybody. I think that, you know, just from the evidence of what the reaction's been to how Richard phrased himself.
Fascinating.
Is, you know, you even sort of asked it in the opening of the question, people then said to him. So that, you've answered your own question, really, haven't you? It didn't have the optimal response.
Oh, God, no. I wonder if he even meant that.
Lady,
no, I don't think
Alex
he
Phillips
did.
says.
I don't think he did. And I think that Nigel is far more adept because he's far more practiced. He's been doing this for ages, and Nigel's had the shit thrown at him for ages.
Nigel's
for ages.
got a lot of
He's a professional
and
shit dodger.
Playing the game.
Most of the time, the shit hits him and actually just
People
makes him
forget,
stronger
we've got
because
4
it's their
years
bullshit,
in
it's not
general,
his.
So.
Richard is contextually not as experienced as Nigel, and also because he's polite and nice and, you know, articulate and middle class and
Richard
charming.
Tice, the donor.
They've never roughhoused him as much as they have done Nigel. So he's just, you know, he's not.
I'm not sure.
Perhaps not as savvy in that regard. Very, very bright man.
Richard Tice
very bright man and a good man. I mean, I just want to say this about Richard. If anyone out there's gone, I don't like Richard Tice anymore. He's one of the most incredible, humble people I've ever met. When the Brexit Party finished, he put it on ice. The name had already been changed to Reform, but he put time and energy and money into that to keep it alive and ticking over. Just a shell of a thing. But he kept it alive.
What he said about Tommy, that lot.
And he always wanted Nigel to come back, is what he wanted.
Included in that lot.
Often I was used as the interlocutor. Have you spoken to Nigel? Do you know where he's at? Do you know if he's thinking of coming back? And it was a given that when Nigel comes back, it's his party. And not just his party in terms of he becomes leader, but Nigel is a leader in every sense of the word. He really manages. He becomes the sort of
Nigel's
the king. And Richard wanted that.
I think he can smell 10 Downing Street.
Energy and time and money into keeping that party alive, knowing that the one who's going to take home the accolades, the one who's going to have the worship, the one who's going to be in the history books, will be Nigel. Show me a man able to do that. Very few people have that sort of humility, generosity, and pragmatism. That very few people have that, and Richard has it in abundance.
Final couple of things. What does the future hold for you? And also, if you were Prime Minister,
it's been going on for about 2.5, 3 weeks.
How would you change the country? How would you like the UK to become?
No one knows what the future holds.
What do you want it to hold? What are you striving for?
I'd like to get married and have children, actually, if I'm honest.
Good on you.
I thought
Time's
she
ticking
was
on.
married.
And I'm afraid that's kind of out of my hands, because you need a willing partner on the other side who's on board with that. I would like. I'm always going to, in my life, be committed to engaging with what happens with this country. I have done. My whole career's been about that. Like I said, I walked out of the BBC before I'd even done 6 months there, to go and work for UKIP when they were still an unknown. So I've known that that is my raison d'etre for a long time. How that manifests, whether it's broadcast, whether it's politics, I don't know. I have a feeling, given the way that broadcasting is going, it's going to be politics. And so, yeah, that's where I'd like it to go, in that direction. You know, rather than just talk about it like I'm doing right now, do it. Let's see what fate has in store, what he has in store for me, because it's, you know,
Come
be
on,
his,
Alex, you can
his
do it.
agenda really that I fulfill.
I think she'd be a fantastic
If I was
Reform
Prime
MP.
Minister, I just think that what's needed is guts and conviction.
Yes.
I think for too long there's been a reticence to doing what's necessary.
Yes.
And actually a sort of brutal sense of honesty and leadership. Because
Yes.
politicians now, because they're all from the finishing school of the sort of
my
tugging the
days.
forelock, they're all from the professional classes, really.
Makes you want to cry, like,
You don't
listening
really
to
have
Alex,
people who have lived an
a
unsheltered
lady,
life
educated,
and therefore have an unhindered vision.
who says everything that
So I would
needs to be
hope that if
done
I
as
end
the
up
leader of this country.
at any point in any ways
They
of the
just don't do
workings
any
of
of
the
it.
state, that I would just be a champion for conviction. And
Do you feel like you're stuck on a treadmill,
I need
working
to
hard
get
but going
premium.
nowhere?
Don't know.
That's exactly how I felt in my 90s.
and actually having a vision rather than just day by day managing a situation, hoping that somehow it's all going to work out, but treading the fine line because you don't want to upset the apple cart or risk your own seat. Or, you know, in this game, you've got to be risk averse, really, or there's no point playing.
And what does the ideal Britain look like for you?
It looks like a country that is able to unite about things because people are setting these in stone. You know, since King Charles came to the throne, we haven't had trestle
to be a
tables out for a
mini
thing
United
for a while.
States now,
I kind
in
of
a way,
want that. That's
because
what we
we're
do.
We've
You
turned
know,
into
I don't know, it's probably not due a
multicultural
jubilee or
society.
something, but can you come up with some fucking reason why we can all get out
If
trestle
you go
tables and make
through
soggy
America,
sandwiches
there are
again? Because
American
I like
flags
that stuff.
everywhere.
People might think it's silly and unimportant, but actually it's
You need
not.
to see
These little markers are quite
Union Jacks
important. Throw an
and
extra
St.
bank
George's
holiday
flags
into the mix.
everywhere in England.
Stop talking down the country. DEI gone. This stuff is toxic.
Yeah.
It's harmful. That's banned. I don't want any of that. Don't want any of this sort of
DEI
corrupt,
is disgusting.
horrible, divisive, narrative about seeing everything through the prism
That
of
is
race.
very
That's
offensive
banned.
to
That's
me.
gone.
My
Woke,
granny was
gone. It's evil.
Belizean.
It's failed. It's made us divided as society.
Woke feeds racism, I think.
Yeah, no, it does.
Yeah.
And do you know what? If you
It is
took that
racism.
shit out, you'd actually find that a lot of
It's
people in a lot of cultures rubbed
horrendous
along a lot better. And
wokeism
when
is.
people came here, they'd want to integrate because they had something to buy into. You can't say people are coming to Britain, not integrating, not buying into the concept of Britain, when the concept of Britain is being kicked in the bollocks and thrown to the dogs.
Yeah.
Like, what do you want people to be buying into then? So that's got to come back. And I'm a big believer in positivity, building positively
we need a
for
leader
the
like
future.
Nigel
Not going,
Farage, who would
this is
get rid of
terrible. That's
DEI.
wrong. No, I'm an optimistic person. So I want to see, we need to boost the economy enormously. We need to go down the sort of Javier Milei route of taking the chainsaw to all of the crap and the sort of, dead weeds that tangle up business and industry in this country. It's got to go. And then just a sense of optimism and not be afraid to bring back old-fashioned values and teachings. Schools should have school assemblies. School assemblies should be built upon Christianity.
have school
I'm not saying everyone's got to go
assemblies
to church and believe, but I'm afraid this is a Christian country, and that is why we thrived. That is why we thrived throughout history. One religion has brought the progress. One. Vaccines, internet, computers, electricity, you bloody name it, ending slavery, whatever you want to look at.
We created
One religion
the
largely
lot
has been
in this
the
country,
big
and I'm
engine
not just
behind
big
so
enough,
much
big enough
human
Britain
and
or
societal
England.
progress. And let's
But
not
come
forget
on.
that, and let's not be ashamed of that, and let's make that
I am not ashamed of
at
the
the
British
basis
Empire
once
at
more
all.
of how we think about ourselves and how we want to
We've
build
brought a lot
our
of
country going forward. I
ingenuity.
think that is, like I said,
And brilliant.
his hand's on my shoulder, and I feel like I, in many respects, am trying to do his bidding,
Anyway.
maybe not brilliantly. But
That's Alex Phillips. Fantastic. I will put Liam Tuff's details, his link in the description so you can watch the whole thing. I'll put Alex Phillips's details in for her channel as well. My next video will be Tommy Robinson's emotional, heartfelt interview with Miss Alex Phillips. So, thanks for joining me. Please hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share away. Thanks for joining me once again, guys. I feel awful. I'm going to have a lie down for a few hours and then make the Tommy Robinson video. Again, thank you very much and goodbye.